Welcome to Cardboard Swords and another fab for less budget deck tech. The Mechanologist class came out of Dynasty with some brand new spice. Let's see what Blitz Deck we can cook up with that spice for a budget of £20. Let's get in. Well, Dash is the original Mechanologist, originally printed in Arcane Rising, and it was a very good hero back in the Arcane Rising meta, although it kind of went off the radar, but it's come back again with a bit of a bang recently, making a few top 8s. Dash's ability simply reads, you may start the game with a Mechanologist item with cost 2 or less in the arena. She's got a choice of weapons, but the Hanabi Blaster, recently printed in Dynasty, has definitely turned a few heads. Once per turn you can remove 2 steam counters from the Hanabi Blaster to attack for 5 with overpower. The real bonus for this weapon though is that it's free. You get steam counters whenever you play the 3rd boost card each turn, which we want to do anyway. In this build we're also running the Plasma Barrel Shot, which might be a better option if we're going first because you can pay to preload it. Hyperdriver was a bit of an unassuming item that was printed in Arcane Rising and recently reprinted in Dynasty. Also printed with it were lots of cards that synergize with it. In this deck, we're going to go low to the ground, and we're going to use that one resource from Hyperdriver to go wide and to go big. Protecting our noggin, we've got the trusty Iron Rot Helm. It's 1 extra life and it might be used to save us against a non-hit effect. We've also got the Vest of the First Fist. That's a must run in this deck. Those 2 resources can help us come in with something big at the end of a chain. The Goliath Gauntlet is a bit of a flex slot, but this can help us start the chain with a 2-cost attack in a fairly big way. And the Achilles Accelerator is a must run. Cracking these to give us an action point after we've boosted can really help us go a little bit wider on the chain. And sometimes we might want to boost, play out another Hyperdriver, then use the boots to continue our combat chain. And back in the locker we've got some Ironhide protection, which is useful for those big heavy hitting heroes with dominate effects, or alternatively heroes with on hit effects, and we've also got some Null Rune for those wizards. So with Dash's ability we're going to want to start the game with a Hyperdriver in play. Choose the red one, we're running a yellow one but the red one comes in with 3 counters rather than 2. Hyperdriver has a once per turn effect, when you boost it gives you a resource. We're going to run plenty of boost attacks that synergize with Hyperdriver. Crankshaft is one of those new ones from Dynasty that does that. It comes in for 5, for 2 costs and you can boost it to give it go again, but if this is boosted into your banish zone, then it will give you an extra steam counter on Hyperdriver. Jumpstart is a 5 damage attack that costs 2, but if you've got a Hyperdriver in play, it costs 1 less. We're also running a couple of copies of Urgent Delivery, which on hit allows you to put an item into play. This is a good way to get out Hyperdrivers without losing tempo. But we've also got the boots to fall back on. If we boost, play out a Hyperdriver, crack the boots, and then we can carry on with our turn. As you'd expect, we're running as many low to the ground boost attacks as we can. 0 to 60 is an absolute staple, we're running 6 of these. T-Bone has a strange effect that can sometimes snag people's equipment unexpectedly, but the important thing here is it says 0 in the top right, and it says boost on the card. And we've also got a couple of 1-cost boost attacks in Zipper Hit, which is a straight up 1 for 5 with boost, and High Speed Impact, which is a 1 for 4 with boost, but if it hits, the next attack that you boost on the combat chain gains Dominate, which is an extremely relevant ability in the late game. Having done all this boosting, we're going to need some sort of payoff, and we've got one, in the form of our weapon. Whichever one you choose to run is going to reward us for boosting a number of times. If we're going first, you might decide to run the Plasma Barrel Shot. The advantage of this is that you can load it on turn 1, paying 2 to put a steam counter on it, and then the very next turn you can go really wide and it will come in for the number of times you've boosted plus 1, so it might come in for 5 on turn 2 at the end of a long chain. The Hanabi Blaster also comes in for 5, but it's a little bit more temperamental. It only gets steam counters when you play the 3rd card with boost each turn. Now in this deck we can do that fairly reliably, although having to do that turn 1 allows our opponent to cycle their hand by blocking and also might leave us without a card in arsenal, which is never good in turn 1. But our weapons aren't the only payoffs we've got for boosting. We've also got cards like Overblast, which gets plus X, where X is the number of times you've boosted on the chain, and Vest the First Fist is going to give us those 2 resources we need to play this at the end of a long chain. The only thing to be aware of here is that we cannot break the combat chain before we play Overblast, so we can't use things like Goliath Gauntlet to give it an extra boost. However, we've also got Maximum Velocity, which doesn't care about the combat chain. This costs 2 and comes in for 10, but we can only play it if we've boosted 3 times. Boosting 3 times in this deck is really easy. What's more, you can then snap the Goliath Gauntlet to give this an extra 2 and come in for 12, and then because you've just boosted 3 times, you might now have a counter on Hanabi Blaster. So let's break the boots and come in with a Blaster for another 5. Yeah, things can just get a bit silly. Okay, let's have a look at some sample hands and see how much damage we can output. Our opening hand looks okay. Nice to see the Hyperdriver. 2 Hyperdrivers are always better than 1, so setting up on turn 1 is not a bad option. Play Jumpstart for 5, boost it, and we've boosted into a Crankshaft, so that'll put a steam counter on our Hyperdriver, and our Hyperdriver will gain as a resource. We're then going to play Urgent Delivery, and if that hits, we can play out our Hyperdriver for free, and we've come in for 9 damage on turn 1. If Urgent Delivery didn't hit, we'd probably pop the boots and make sure we get that Hyperdriver into play. Let's have a look at turn 2. Wow, we might be able to play Maximum Velocity on turn 2 here. So we're going to boost to 0 to 60, that'll come in for 4, it'll also gain us a couple of resources from the 2 Hyperdriver triggers. Unfortunately, 2 resources might not be enough here. We'll play T-Bone, which is another 0 cost boost attack. We've boosted into another Crankshaft, so that's going to gain us another steam counter on one of our Hyperdrivers. If either this or the next attack hit, we could then pop the Vest of the First Fist to give us enough resources. I'm going to come in for another 3 and boost it. That's our 3 boost attacks, but we forget to put a steam counter on the Hanabi Blaster here. We can then break the chain, the Goliath Gauntlet, and the Maximum Velocity, which will come in for 12, for a total of 21 damage on turn 2. Not too shabby. Let's have a look at our next hand. Oh, another Maximum Velocity, that's always nice to see. Unfortunately, the attacks we've got to go with it are not great. I think the goal here is to boost 3 times for the steam counter on the Blaster, and then arsenal the Maximum Velocity for a big turn later on. So we can boost the 0 to 60, that'll give us 2 resources from the Hyperdrivers. We've realised our mistake last turn and corrected that and put the counter on the Blaster. Pay 1 for a high speed impact. That'll come in for 4. Pay another 1 for a jump start to come in for 3. That'll give us the second steam counter on the Blaster, which means we can now use that to come in for a further 5. That's a turn of 14, which isn't to be sniffed at, and we also get to arsenal that big payoff for a later turn. Let's have a look at our next hand. Not ideal. Probably going to pitch that Overblast away. We don't need that, seeing as we've got another payoff sat in our arsenal. We can zip a hit for 5, we'll boost, we'll get 2 resources from that, and 1 Hyperdriver will now go to the graveyard. High speed impact for 4, boost that. Play out another zipper hit for another 5, total of 14. We managed to get that steam counter on the Blaster. Right, let's see if we can get that big finisher turn to fire. Looks like we might be able to here. Lots of cheap boost attacks. 0 to 60, boost that. Get our last resource from the Hyperdriver, which now goes to the graveyard. Can T-Bone, boost it. We can pay 1 for the high speed impact and boost that as well. That's 3 boosted attacks, which gives us a steam counter for the blaster. Use that to come in for 5. Then we can pop the boots to give us an action point. We can then pay the last 2 to come in for another 10. It's 24 damage and probably lights out. Time to have a look at the deck stats. So we're only running 8 blue pitch cards here. We're very low to the ground, so it's not necessary to run many more than this. We've got 31 cards that boost to always give us that option, and our 5 boost payoffs in the deck to really end those turns with a big hit. Let's have a look at the budget and see if we came in on target. In this deck we've got 3 Majestics, 11 Rares, and we've got 1 Majestic weapon in the Hanabi Blaster, which is a really good card and well worth a spot in your collection. Our aim here was to create a Blitz list with a total card value for under £20. Using the Cardmarket Shopping Wizard, our list came in at €17.60, which with the current exchange rate translates to a total of £15.26. That's a real bargain. Now with shipping that came in at around £23, but you can get this list delivered to your door for under 25 quid. If you're a newer player and you like the look of the Mechanologist class but you want to just dip your toe instead of going all in, this might be a great place to start. It's certainly a deck that could grab you a few wins at some armories, and we've seen the raw power that it can put out over just a few turns. One card to consider upgrading with is the Techro Pounder, although it somewhat takes away from the Hyperdriver synergies that we've got in this deck, so the deck might need a slight rejig if you're going to consider that. Thanks for watching this Fab for Less budget deck tech. The link to the deck list is in the description. If you enjoyed this content, there's plenty more of it on the Cardboard Swords YouTube channel, and plenty more to come, so please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.